interviewer, you have a little bit of experience. We'll probably divide this up a little bit because I know I want to give you guys a break at like the hour. So I'll do a little bit and come back to a little bit more, then we'll do the practice. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
Do you think?
I'll just do it for
I
you.
can do it. No, don't be silly. Let me just make sure I know which one works. Okay, great. So we're going to start today with, we're going to just talk a little bit about preparing. No worries. Preparing for the interview. I would imagine by a show of hands for the people that are in the room. I mean, I guess we also have the ability to do maybe a little bit of a show of hands with the people on the Zoom. Is there anyone here who hasn't had an interview yet? Anywhere? Everybody's had a job or an internship. Does anybody feel like they've had like so basic of an interview that it was kind of like, when are you available? What hours can you work? And that was it. Does anybody feel like they've actually gone through, or I guess, is there anyone in the room that feels like they haven't really gone through an interview where they've been asked a kind of series of serious questions? Okay, so we have a few. Great. So all I have to say is you guys are getting off the hook pretty easy with Leticia, because when I teach this class, your interview actually is scored and graded based on how you answered the questions, or that you at least answered them and you answered what was asked and you were prepared and such. So good for you that you don't have to be scored on that, but definitely take advantage of taking that feedback from your interviewer, because that's going to be really helpful. And also from your peer who sits in and watches it after the fact, also talk to that person, because you'll both have the opportunity to watch each other's, and then that will really help you know whether or not that peer reviewer thinks that, there was anything you could improve on. I will chat as we go through today's little session on interviewing, and we'll talk a little bit about things that can help make your interview better. But a couple things that I wanted to address that I don't normally address in the interviewing presentation that I do, or the session that I do, but they were in kind of a prior session that I would have done if this was a year that I was teaching this class, because I used to teach this class as well. In years past, I've done it a couple times, but I wanted to make sure you all got this, and I don't know whether or not you had this as part of your curriculum when you were doing your resumes, but when it comes to preparing for your job interviewing process, I kind of wanted to first start out with your email addresses. And I don't know whether Leticia mentioned this, but one thing I will definitely suggest is, Stephanie, you can go sit down. Oh, you don't have to stand here. Anyway, I wanted to make sure everybody realizes, establish a professional email address. No more, I'm a dog lover at gmail.com. My daughters had Woody is our dog at Yahoo. I mean, all of these fun little emails that you may have had. I would recommend that if you don't have a professional email that is, and obviously don't use your SDSU email, because I think you all have SDSU emails at this point. Most of the students do. You want one that's going to carry forward with you after you graduate. So just have the same email address, but you might want to set up an email address that is strictly just for your interviews. If that helps you, so that like when you're getting email responses, you know exactly where they are, you know how to prioritize them. But I would definitely do something as professional as you can, with your initials and or your last name followed by your first name or so forth, but definitely nothing cutesy, because you're going to be sending these out to professional people, and your email address is probably going to live on for quite some time, and you're not going to want to change it, because you never know, you could interview for a job in 2022, and in 2023 that person wants to reach out to you and talk to you about a position they have then that they didn't have today, and you'll want them to be able to find you. So I always try and make sure everybody realizes you have to have a professional email. Sometimes first initial, last name. Sometimes a number or something in your email might be required, because you might have a very common last name like Smith or Jones. The other thing I would suggest is that you stick with Gmail or something along those lines. I will also share with you, being somebody who this happened to recently, I would tend to not go with an email address that's attached to your cable provider like Spectrum or Roadrunner or cox.net, because if you move from that location, your email will get shut down, because that happened to me. So I had one for 20 some odd years, and then I switched locations and I don't have that cable anymore. And now I don't have that email address anymore. I already spoke about dedicated email, and be sure you check your email frequently when you're in that job recruiting process, because you don't want to have somebody reach out to you and 4 weeks later you go, oh my God, they were trying to offer me an opportunity to interview for this job. So that just kind of is in your preparation process. Any questions about email prep? No? Okay. Let me see if I don't have to. Looks like I've got to do this somehow. Okay. Another topic that I wanted to make sure we don't forget before we get into interviewing and what you need to do in an interview is your social media. And I don't know if you guys have had conversations about social media. Has there been a topic on that, Stephanie? No? And I see that Leticia is still with us. But I want to make sure everybody realizes you have to clean it up. So whether it's Instagram, it's Facebook, whatever it is, the golden rule in my book is if you don't want your parents to see it, you don't want a hiring manager to see it. So I would definitely recommend that you do a couple things. One is make sure that your social media is not have anything on it that would be inappropriate for an employer to look at, because they will be looking at social sites. It's quite common for HR departments to go out and stalk social sites, and that could all go all the way to LinkedIn, I mean, which isn't really social, but definitely Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I would definitely say don't have any pictures on there that you don't find you would want an employer to see, or that they would feel would be not necessarily what they would want to see. Like if you have any pictures on the beach or enjoying any alcoholic beverages, I would definitely not have those on your page. And I would also say that if necessary, and you don't want to necessarily do a complete overhaul to your social media, and you want to have that as something that's on the side, and you'd rather it kind of be out of the scope of your job interviewing process, don't have it be under your first and last name. So if you have a nickname, I would definitely say remove your last name from it, especially when it's the social ones like Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat. Not Snapchat, really. I can't imagine they're really going to stalk your Snapchat. And Twitter, don't have your last name on them. Have it be something that your friends can find you, because you've already been established and you can just change your name and move on. I don't think you're going to run across too much of a problem of people reaching back out into like past iterations of you. But if they can just type in Barb Robinette and find you, in the instance of me, then that would be a super easy process for them to find your social media account and stalk your pictures and stalk your messages are, and see if there's been interaction between you and your friends that possibly wouldn't be what they would hope they would be for their work environment. So changing your name to something a little bit more cryptic would be smart, so that they can't really find you. Any questions about social media? Any questions from the Zoomers?
No, but I was gonna add that I think Leticia, or I think we had Natalia from the Career Center mention a little bit about this when she was talking about LinkedIn, and also just mentioning a little bit of like how important it is to be very careful with your social media.
Yeah.
So
great. And also the one thing to keep in mind is on LinkedIn, be as specific as you can with your name, because you really do want people to find you on your LinkedIn, and you should be putting your LinkedIn profile name on your resume as well. And we'll talk about that a little, because I don't know if I wish I would have prepared myself to know what was taught about resumes, but LinkedIn, definitely you want your name completely attached, and you want to be easy to find. The other social medias that are not job related, I would say be as behind the scenes as you can if you have any concerns that anything you're posting would impact your ability to get hired. And there was a question in the back. Yeah. If you're professional, and think about it, like if you're in a career and you're working there already, and things that you're posting on your page are things that you may or may not think your boss would want to know or higher ups would want to know, then I wouldn't put them out there. Like, I don't worry about it, because all of my employees can find me on social media because there's nothing on my social media that would be concerning. But I also know that millennials are out and you're having fun and, people are on the beach and all kinds of crazy things. And I just want to make sure nobody's having any of their personal life that may not be any issue at all personally, just may not be something you want people at work to see. Any other questions? Okay. I think that's it on social. All right, so we're going to talk today about interviewing and I have a handful of slides, but before we take a break, I'm going to see if this video will work. And this is my kind of preview on interviewing. And this is a video that I have used for a couple years on kind of like to set the stage on interviewing. So hopefully if I click on this, it'll work for everybody. Ooh. I'll try and make it bigger. Hopefully the audio works.
Amy, it says you are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No,
PowerPoint?
no,
Publisher?
not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter, the big ones.
I'm surprised you didn't say Facebook.
That's for old people like my parents. That's funny.
Well, Amy, when you're working for me, you have to have those kind of research skills because I'll send you things for you to comb through and get the answers and send them to me. So for that, you've got to be really good at technology.
For stuff like that, no problem. I'll just ask Siri.
You just ask Siri?
Siri, tell me this, Siri, find me that. We're all good at getting you the answers.
Tell Siri, I want you ready to go at 8 sharp each and every morning.
I don't understand
What don't you understand?
what you just said.
You don't understand, be ready to go?
No. You said 8, right?
Yes.
8 like in the morning, 8?
Yes, in the morning.
Yeah, that kind of doesn't work for me. Who gets up at 8?
I do.
I Skype with my French boyfriend in Paris until like 3 in the morning. I don't even get to Starbucks until like 10, where I order my grande chai tea latte, 3 pumps, skim milk, light water, 2% foam, extra hot, but not too hot. So if it's okay, I work best in the morning at 10:45.
Wow. Amy, I don't think we're going to be a good fit.
Why are you so negative? I can sense your hostilities, and right now I am not feeling very safe. I've been here for over 5 minutes, and the only nice thing you have said to me was nice resume, which I typed all night for this meeting with you. You've given me no guidance, no validation, no encouragement, no supervision. Is there an HR director somewhere?
HR director?
Yes, I need to speak to someone. I may have to take off today as a mental health day.
Take the day off. Amy, look at me. You don't work here.
Are you firing me?
Okay, yes.
So with that, we'll take a break.
So we do have a question. I don't know if you want to answer it now, Barb, or so really quick, someone on Zoom is asking, I'd like to know, does it really make a difference to connect your appropriate / professional social media accounts to employers? Like, do employers consider your application more if your social media is more clean and professionally based?
I mean, there is no need to connect them. So if that's part of the question, I would definitely not encourage that anybody needs to
Like add them or anything?
add them anywhere on your resume, anywhere. You should not connect them to your LinkedIn. I think that they're totally irrelevant. The only social media you should connect to your resume is LinkedIn. And so I wouldn't do that if that's the whole question. And I do think that if you do have stuff that's on your social media that's not work friendly, then even more reason why you would absolutely never connect them. Did I answer the question?
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Any other questions from the room?
No, there's another one for resume, but not about this.
Okay, great.
Yeah,
So we could take a break and then you'll do attendance. And then we'll
Yes.
come back together and we'll talk about interviewing.
okay, yeah.
Great. I don't know how much time you normally, 10 minutes?
Yeah, let's do 10 minutes. Is that a good time? Yeah, okay,
Great.
10-minute break. Okay, so I can't remember what time we took our break. So let's just do 5:10. We'll just, that's for a person in class and or in class person and in Zoom class. You guys can keep talking, it's fine. Can I just do really quick? Yeah. Sure. Just a couple of minutes. All righty, class, let's wrap it up. People in Zoom. All right, people on Zoom, give me a thumbs up if we're back. Awesome. Yeah, thank you for putting in the chat and thumbs up. Cool. All righty, gang. So I'm gonna take attendance right now. Again, for those on Zoom, I'm going to take attendance now. So please go in and take your attendance quiz. Has already been published. And that goes for both Zoom people and in class. So it has been published. Take a few minutes to do that, and then we can continue with Barb's presentation. Alrighty, just really quick, if anyone else has any questions and you want to meet with me, I will be here just to clarify any questions. I know Leticia was presenting. So please stop by and ask any questions. Also, for those that have messaged me or Leticia on Canvas or email and we haven't got back to you, so sorry about that, but we will get back to you. If we haven't got back to you within a week, please email me again and I will try to get back to you, okay? Sweet. Any problems with attendance quiz? Good? Alrighty. I think for the majority it was good. So yeah, we can continue.
Thanks. Okay, so we're going to talk about interviewing. The reason I always like to show the cute little video of our millennial exaggeration, not because I think anyone in this room would do that, but because I have 20-something-year-olds as well, and it's a reality. There's people out there that don't necessarily know exactly what's expected of them in an interview. I've had some interesting mock interviews in years past that I've conducted mock interviews in this class. We've done them face-to-face. I've had people show up with baseball hats on. I had people show up with baseball hats on backwards. I told them they needed to get their baseball hat off, and they honestly thought I was joking with them. And I didn't make anybody dress up because I felt like that was just a little bit over the top. Although when you go to grad school and you do mock interviews in grad school, you literally show up in a suit. It's like, it's a legit interview process, and they do videotaping and then they play it back for you and the whole thing. I never made anybody dress for it, but I really was honestly shocked that I had a student that showed up with his baseball hat on backwards and went into his interview. So I just always feel like, you know what, there's always might be a little bit of humor, but it gets the point across. So we're going to talk a little bit today about interviewing, and we're not going to take a ton of time because we're already a little bit backed up and I want to make sure you all are out of here by 6 o'clock. But we're going to talk a little bit about the before, the during, and the after. So, and you will have all of these slides, so don't worry about having to take notes on anything. You will find them in Canvas. And hold on, I think I have to scroll.
Yeah.
This is just a little weird because it's PDF. Okay, so before, a couple things about. It is getting the whole page. Yeah, I already zoomed out to 125. Yeah. So I just thought I could click, but it's because it's a PDF. So beforehand, before you're getting ready for your interviews, and this will go for both your mock interviews that you're going to do with your guest interviewer or your volunteer interviewer and your peer reviewer in a couple weeks, but also in real interviews. And I appreciated the question about the person who said, what do we do about the job description? Does it have to meet a specific requirement? And I think that some of you possibly have been in jobs where when you go to work for a company, there is a job description. What Leticia, I think, was referring to is like a job posting where you might see it posted online on Monster, on LinkedIn, on all kinds of different websites, or on a specific company's website. So it's the overarching description of the role that you're applying for. So I would say a couple things that are really important for you to do. Number one is to research. If you know who's going to be interviewing you, you can always look them up and stalk them on LinkedIn and see what their role is all about, see what they're responsible for. You would hate to go into a job interview knowing it's an environmental specialist and the person that you're interviewing for is the HR person. If you find out that they're the HR person, they're not going to know as much about the nitty-gritty of the job, or find out that the person has responsible for many things and isn't really, have necessarily the specific role you think. So knowing what their role is about, at least from a high level online, is helpful so that you can, you might even want to say, oh, I noticed that, you have responsibility for these 3 areas, how many employees are in each area. You have the opportunity to be interactive. Also, you definitely want to do research on the company. You never want to go into a job interview. And I wouldn't necessarily say this in your mock interviews, because I don't think anyone's going to expect you in your mock interviews with your mock interviewer to know the in-depth details of the company your job description is about. I think they're going to ask more about how you would be a fit with that role. But when you are applying for a job, say with Sharp Memorial, and you're looking for a position in their laboratory or whatever it might be, you want to know a little bit about Sharp. You want to know about how many hospitals are in the Sharp healthcare system, and a little bit about the Sharp experience, which is promoted on television and in all of their advertising campaigns. You might want to talk to a couple people you know that work at Sharp. It wouldn't be a good idea to go in and not know anything about Sharp and then start, kind of trying to have a conversation and them asking you something about what you know about Sharp, and really only thing you know is about Kaiser or Scripps, or some of those examples. So do your homework on the company. I mean, you don't have to spend hours and hours and hours unless it is absolutely the most diehard interview you're having in all of your interviewing experience, but it is your responsibility to learn as much about the company before you walk in, so you have some really well thought out questions for the person who's interviewing you. And then lastly, the position that you're interviewing for. It's really important to do some research on that kind of a role. Hopefully it's a role that you're applying for because you have a very deep-seated interest in that. If you're applying for a position in, management, or you're applying for a position in human resources, or in the lab, or in radiology, or in fundraising, any type of role that has something to do with your career interests that you're lining up for, you should do some research. And like I said, in addition to talking to people who work there about the company, you could also talk to people about that position. And do you know anybody in that department? Do you know, is there any way you can connect me with somebody who works in that department? This is where your networking comes into play. And like Leticia had talked about, your elevator pitch and going to conferences and talking to people about things that are of interest. If you can identify somebody who knows somebody who works in the area where you're interested, you could even say, would you be willing to go for coffee with me? This happened not all that long ago. My daughter works for an advertising piece of Cox Communications, and she had somebody who wanted to apply for a job within her company, and that person reached out to her and said, would you be willing to go for coffee with me and talk to me about the position that they have posted, so I kind of have an idea of what I'd be getting into if I were to get an interview? And that's completely normal. People do that all the time. And then that person could go in, at the end of having coffee, you could say, would it be okay with you that I mentioned that we met, we chatted, you explained the company to me? Because that really shows your investment in the company you're going to apply for, or in the organization, whether it be the county or any number of organizations. So just doing your research on who's interviewing you, the company or the entity you're going to apply to, and the position, something that will get you ready and prepared for the interview when you get in there. Any questions? Do we have any Zoom questions? Nope. Okay. Being prepared. And I don't think I have anything on the next slide. Let's make sure. Okay, no. Being prepared. To me, the biggest part of being prepared for job interviews is prepping for what I would say are the standard questions that could be asked. And we're going to talk about those in a little bit of detail. And you will have those available to you both on a sheet of paper that's been posted out to Canvas that you will be using for the exercise later this afternoon, as well as just some basics that are just very, very common types of interview questions. The other thing that I think is a really good idea is to be prepared with some stories. So we'll talk about that a little bit as we look at some of the questions that we, offer up as things to get you prepared and get you thinking. But it's a really good idea to have some stories that you kind of have in the back of your mind, so that if you get asked a question, you can basically pull in that story and be able to provide it. Because in today's world, the practice of behavioral interviewing is very, very common. Behavioral interviewing is not, have you ever run a cash register? Have you ever, interacted with patients in a healthcare environment? Instead, it's, tell me about a time that you interacted with a patient and the patient did, went off the rails, was upset. How did you deal with it? And tell me how that all went. Was it a positive outcome or a negative outcome? And then tell me how that whole thing, they want you to tell them a story. And the reason for this is that if you ask somebody yes and no questions, like, have you ever dealt with patients? Yes. Have you ever dealt with angry patients? Yes. That doesn't really get to the heart of why you would be a good fit for that, other than you saying you did it. And anybody can say yes. But most people will not be able to answer a question on, give me an example of a time that you were dealing with a patient who was emotionally fragile and you needed to help guide them through the healthcare system XYZ. I'm making something up. When you ask someone to give you an example of a time that something went well or didn't go well, they can't really wing it, because it'll stump them, and it is okay for you to sit and think, let me think about the best example I can give you. And sometimes you may not have a perfect example, but you could say, I don't really have a perfect example for that, but I do have a situation which that happened in this scenario, and you can offer up that example. I've also had students ask me, is it okay if the example was from an internship? Absolutely. Internships are jobs, in my opinion. They may be paid, they may not be paid, but there's no reason not to use an example from an internship. I've also had people ask me if it's okay to offer up an example of, if you're asked a question about, tell me about a time that you worked as a team and your team member wasn't pulling their own weight. Can you use an example of a school project? Absolutely. Because you have all not necessarily been in roles in your current life that include being in a team environment where other people's work depends on your work. But you've been in school, and we all know you've been on team projects. And we all know you've all had an experience where somebody wasn't pulling their own weight. So there's no reason not to use that. I always say, if you have a work example, give the work example, because that just shows that you've entertained this at work. But if you don't have a work example, say that. Say, I've never really had that at work because I've been kind of a sole contributor. I haven't really worked on a team where we had that type of thing come into play. But I have a school project example that completely explains how this all went down. So in my opinion, it is completely fine to be prepared to use those examples and have those stories ready to go. Any questions about storytelling or behavioral interviewing? We'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to the actual questions. Another thing to be prepared with is salary or pay. Getting into conversations in an interview about salary or pay are sticky. They are probably the most difficult questions you can get into in an interview. I would definitely say, if the interviewer doesn't bring up pay during the interview, don't bring it up. It's too soon. They typically aren't conversations you'll have all the time in a first interview, because you're kind of in a screening mode. They're screening all the candidates. They're trying to figure out if all the candidates are, who they want to take through to the next level. Sometimes human resources will screen people before they go to the hiring manager, and they might ask questions about, what are your pay expectations? And what I try to guide people on, whether it's the hiring manager or it's human resources, if you get posed with the question, this is the question that's going to rattle all of you, because you're not going to know what you want to say. And you can definitely back yourself into a corner, and you can put yourself in a situation where you maybe shortchange yourself and you don't get as much pay as you possibly could have. So what I would recommend is, if you're asked the question, what are your salary expectations? I would rebut that with, what is the range this particular position with these responsibilities? Put it back on the person who's asking you the question, because you might throw out, sorry, all of a sudden I thought I couldn't hear. I want to be paid $40,000 a year, but the hiring salary might be 50 to 70. So if you throw out what you think is what you need to be paid, you're going to go low because you don't want to get bounced out of the interview. And, or you go high and you might get bounced out on the high end. And you might shortchange yourself. So if you say, well, you know, I'm curious, I'm glad you brought this up. What is the range of this particular position within your organization based on the responsibilities? And if they say, well, you know, there's such a wide range because some people might have experience, some people may not. Well, you can always say, well, you know, is there, you know, for a person who's entry-level graduate coming out of school or wherever you might be in your career, what would be, you know, the minimum and the midpoint, because all major organizations have these. They have guidelines on what they're going to be willing to go low, medium, high, and it'll all be dependent on your experience. So I will just share, don't try your best not to get rattled over the salary question or the pay question, but put it back on them. And then if they say the range is 40 to 50, and that's something you can live on and you can afford, and something more than what you're being paid today or comparable to what you're being paid today, and you're willing to take that pay, then you can say that, you know, that range is in line with what I was expecting. And that, just leave it at that. Because they will also potentially get into, well, how much do you currently make? And you don't have to share that. By law, at least in the state of California, an employer cannot ask you how much you currently make. It's really not their business. And what you make today is not really relevant to what they should be paying you. What they should pay you is based on your experience, your education, and what you bring to the position, and the range for that position in their company based on the responsibilities. And so just because you've made $20 an hour doesn't mean that when you go to work for them, you're going to make $20 an hour. And you got to also think through in your mind when you're at home and you can think through things in a normal, calm, on your own way, the salary, the hourly rate as it converts to a full-time rate, and benefits and all of that. So the other thing I guess I will share with you is that when it comes to pay, be careful to get into those conversations strictly about just pure compensation on an hourly or an annual basis, because there's a lot of things that come into play. And if you're in that conversation with HR and they're asking you and you're going back and forth over, yes, that range seems, you know, what I would expect for a person with this type of responsibility based on what I know today. You can also say, I am also very much interested in knowing what the total compensation package is as it relates to benefits, time off, vacation, 401k. There's a lot of things that come into your compensation that are not just the hourly amount you make or the annual amount you make. So you might find that you get a job offer from company one and a job offer from company two, and this company looks like they're going to offer you a lot more money, but they offer you miserable benefits. And you need benefits. And this company offers you really great benefits, but maybe not as much on an hourly basis or on an annual basis. And then you have to weigh those, because those things cost money. And if you don't get the certain type of benefits that you need, you're going to have to go buy them somewhere else. So questions about that? No questions about pay? Anybody in Zoom?
Yeah, so there's one asking about how long will be a story. I don't know if that's because you were talking about, like, yeah, in the beginning of.
I mean, it doesn't have to be a long story. It could literally be
Just a
just
short-
explaining a situation that has happened, as long as it takes to explain it. I wouldn't be too verbose, but I also wouldn't make it, you know, 3 words. I think you definitely need to talk them through the scenario.
Okay, thank you. And then we have one more. It says, can we get any more advice on how to answer the salary or pay expectation when it comes to online applications that ask us this? I feel like I struggle too much on this part. Am I saying a number too low? If that makes sense.
Yep.
Is there a number that says we are asking too much that discourages hiring managers from hiring? So basically, like, what is an appropriate number, or how do we approach this question?
I mean, to me, it's all very unusual when it's online. And if there's I know a lot of times online applications will have a field and you have to fill it in and they will want you to put something in there. If you have an opportunity to put in negotiable or open to discussion, if you can type something in there, feel free to do it. I just don't think it's appropriate to get trapped into that question. If there's a way to submit it without submitting that and to put a comment that says, I would really like to discuss this more once I learn more about the position, that would be my preference. If you have to put it in, they're using it kind of as a screening. And I would maybe try and use your mentors or your advisors in your career counseling program or through your faculty program to see if anybody has any advice on what would be a realistic number to put in there. But then if there's a place to put comments, say, you know, I really felt like I was at a disadvantage trying to answer that question and I would like to talk about it more in person.
Okay, so phrasing as a question.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So lastly, on being prepared, as Leticia talked about in the elevator pitches, practice, practice, practice. That's what this is all about. When we're going to do practice today, that's what your practice is in your mock interviews on the 9th and the 16th. But literally, whether you're practicing in front of a mirror, whether you're practicing with your best friend, whether you're practicing in front of a parent, whomever the person is you're practicing with, all of that is going to help you like lessen the fear, lessen the jitters when you get in front of the person and they ask you the questions. Definitely have your mentors that might know more about that job. Definitely take advantage of your networking situation and finding out whether or not there's anything you know is going to be of really heightened consequence. My daughter that graduated from state 2 years ago had a job interview literally 4 weeks ago. And the night before her job interview, she emailed me, she goes, and it was in marketing and I'm in marketing. She was on the sales side of things. She said, Mom, is there anything I could be prepared to address? You know, should I get the question? And I threw out a question to her the night before her interview and she prepared for that question. And when the day came the next day and she had the interview, that person didn't ask that question, but they asked a question that because she had thought through that situation, she used that as her answer. So it's all about remembering those stories, remembering weird situations, remembering conflict, remembering communication challenges, the examples of things you've been through in your work environment. But practicing is going to make you a lot sharper and a lot more at ease. And then really lastly, this also kind of comes into play with some of the stuff Leticia was talking about earlier today. You know, dress to impress, whether you're on Zoom or whether you are face-to-face, make sure you are dressed appropriately. In today's world, things are a lot more business casual, but you are always better off to be overdressed than you are to be underdressed. Always, always, always. If you are a guy and you don't know what their business practices are, a jacket is always preferred. Sometimes a tie. I know that it doesn't feel like today's a tie world, and it really pretty much isn't, but it never can hurt to be overdressed in an interview. I'm saying do not show up in a formal dress. Do not show up in a tuxedo. I'm not talking about that formal, but business attire is definitely always going to win. It's not going to be, no one's going to look down on you for being dressed professionally. You may never wear those kinds of clothes when you go again. And those coffee chats that I talked about, or talking with somebody who works at a place, those people could tell you what the work environment's like. What's the culture like? They can tell you whether or not the attire is formal, whether it's casual. I will say if an organization has a casual policy where that people wear jeans every day and a polo shirt, or, you know, definitely don't dress up, don't do that in an interview. Still dress professionally in an interview. I would say be well rested. Remember, go to bed early, get your sleep, because no matter how early you go to sleep, your mind might be racing anyway, and you may have a difficult time catching any real significant rest before that next day. And be early. Do not show up late for an interview. Leticia mentioned be on time for these interviews that you do on the 9th and the 16th. And I know they're mock interviews. She said you can log in 5 minutes early, be 5 minutes early. Do not be late to an online interview. Test your equipment. Test your equipment with whomever you need to, especially if you know it's a Zoom interview. Test your Zoom connections. Make sure you do Zoom with somebody else. If it's WebEx, test WebEx with somebody. Whatever the online platform is, do your best to be prepared and get online as quickly as possible, because you really don't want to be rattled at the last minute. And this gets everybody. This is not just you. It's not just COVID. It's everywhere, anywhere. I did a town hall for 500 people 2 weeks ago, and the Zoom connection did not work. And I was completely anxious and trying to figure it out. And everybody on the call could tell that like we were rattled and we couldn't get the technology working. So this is not just an interview thing, and it's not just a student thing. There's plenty of issues to be had when you're trying to get connected.
Can I add something,
Yes.
Barb, on that? So that's true that it happens like to anyone. Because for me, when I lived in Idaho and was trying to get a job here in California for with the county, actually, I had a panel interview, and it was a mess because this was before COVID, right? Pre-COVID, and my Zoom wasn't working. I had to tell my roommate or ask her for her computer. It was a mess.
Oh, yeah.
So, and maybe because of that mistake, I didn't get the job, or because of, interview or whatnot, but it's something serious that you have to really be on top of, being early and making sure, everything's going smoothly before the interview. And I know that it's a different like anxiety or stress level being on the computer, but truly make sure, everything is going right for that.
Audio, video, background.
Yeah.
Do not have, do your best to not have a bed in your background. Do it in the dining room. If you have to clear the whole family out of the house so you can do it in the dining room, do whatever you can to make sure it's as professional of a place as possible. I would encourage you all to watch the movie, The Internship, with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. It's a really funny movie, and they do an interview from the library. So I would encourage you to all watch that, because it's just a great movie and super funny. So definitely be prepared, be early, be rested, and make sure you're dressed, and video, audio if you're doing it via Zoom. So that's kind of some stuff on the beforehand. Some of the questions that we are going to provide, and you guys are going to have the opportunity to ask each other some of the questions so that you're a little bit more prepared for your mock interviews in a few weeks. And I know we're really kind of getting narrow on time, but the questions you're going to see in the guide that we've put out on Canvas for you have a lot to do with these specific bullets. And this is all going to be also available to you as well. Always, 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 you're going to be asked your question, what's your greatest strength? What's your biggest weakness? Yes, do everything you can to turn your weakness into a strength. I know that it's not going to be easy, and literally you can Google these questions and you can find some really interesting ideas. A really great weakness, not a great weakness, but a weakness that can be seen as positive is I tend to take on too much. And I've learned, and then what you've done to compensate for taking on too much. Or I tend to overextend or something. Like, there are some definite areas where you can throw out a weakness that isn't like, I'm not reliable. I'm never late. I'm not as timely as I would like to be. You definitely don't want to bring up real things that are true weaknesses that nobody would want to hire you for. And people are going to ask you these questions, hopefully, if they're good interviewers. I've had students who've come back and told me, oh my gosh, I had the worst interviewer. Let me share you a story. But good interviewers will say, give me an example of a strength of yours. Give me an example of a weakness. Tell me a little bit about yourself. Tell me a little bit about yourself is a tricky question. They don't mean like your whole life story. They don't mean, every, bit of detail into your back and your history, but, definitely you can talk about, where you grew up. I'm one of 3 children. I went to school at San Diego State. I got my degree in public health. I'm, emphasized in XYZ. I've done a couple internships, as you can see on my resume, that are in these areas. And that's how I kind of got here and sought out a position to apply with you. We talked about the salary expectations. We talked about behavioral interviewing. It's all going to be, give me an example when. Tell me about a time when. And that's where the storytelling is coming in, and you're answering the question, not in a yes and no, but you actually have to pull examples from your life of how you answer the question. Some people might ask you, give me an example of a stressful situation you've been in and how did you deal with it? A lot of times they're going to ask you, tell me about a project that wasn't a success. Why wasn't it a success? And what did you learn from it? Unsuccessful, not positive, successful events are character building, and they will help you, improve and learn from them. And that's where you need to stress is like, how you learned from that situation. Where do you see yourself in 5 years is a very common question. And that's a harder question to answer when you're a brand new graduate, but sometimes it's, you do have your sights set on where you would like to be, try and tailor it to whatever kind of role you're applying for. If you're in a current job, why are you planning on leaving your current position is typically a question. There's usually a positive spin you can put on it. There's, I've pretty much exhausted all of the opportunities to learn. I really want to learn something new. And, or I'm moving, whatever it might be. And then probably one of the most important questions I think you will be asked and you will need to be prepared for is, what questions do you have for me? You absolutely have to go into an interview prepared to ask 3 questions, whatever those 3 questions are. But you have to go in with 3 prepared questions because you need to show that you actually are interviewing them as much as they're interviewing you. This is not a one-way deal. They may feel like it's a one-way deal, but it is not. You're interviewing them to find out, do I want to work here? So those questions need to be geared around what's important to you as an individual. And I'm not talking about, do you have 16 weeks off of paid vacation? I'm just talking about things like, can you explain what the company culture is? Can you give me an example of somebody who recently had this position and what their next opportunity was after this? 2 really important questions that I think are always good to ask is, where are you in the hiring cycle? And therefore, how soon do you think you'll be making a decision? Because you want to know, are you like on week 1 and they're going to make a decision in 15 weeks, or are they going to make a decision next Friday? Because you also want to know when you should follow up. And then the last question that I always recommend everybody has to ask in some way, shape, or form, and it doesn't have to be word for word, but you need to close the interview. You need to close the sale. Is there anything that would prevent you from moving me on to the next level in the interviewing process? And if this is the last step in the interviewing process, is there anything that would prevent you from recommending me for the position or considering me as a viable candidate for the position? Because you want them to know how much you want it. So you're closing them on the sale. Make sense? Any questions? Okay, let's see. Oh, I do want to at least share this. During the interview, no gum, no water, no fidgeting. Do not chew gum going into an interview. Do not take water, you will spill it. Don't, if they offer you water, no, I'm good, you'll be fine. It's like, you definitely wouldn't want a bottle with no top and then you could knock it. Take notes. That means you have to take a notepad with you. If you don't have a nice looking little portfolio, I would recommend that you get something. You can get one for $10, literally. It doesn't have to be leather, something with a pen and paper, and you have your questions written out that you want to ask them at the end, and have them all prepared, because you might get rattled and you might forget what you wanted your questions to be, or they might be rushing you out the door. Have a notepad. I had a student that I recommended for a position at my company. He got in, he did the interview. He did not take one note. He did not have a notepad. And when I followed up with the hiring manager, I said, how did it go? She said, he didn't even come with anything to write any notes on. And I thought, great. And he wasn't somebody who I thought to tell that to. So I always tell my students, don't ever go into an interview without a notepad. You have to be taking notes. And it's okay to say, just makes, and it might be chicken scratch that you're writing down your little notes. You want something to remind you. So when you walk out the door, you don't forget. And I already told you, ask your questions, close the deal. Okay. And then I already had repeated dress.
Barb, there's a
Time.
question, sorry.
Perfect.
Um, the- Oh gosh, what's happening? Yes, there is a question in the chat and then I have a question.
Okay.
So let's see, the question is, can you give us an example of how you would answer the question? The following question, tell me about yourself. So that's the question. I have a lot of difficulty answering that question. I know you gave some examples, but how would you answer it?
I think I would answer it the way that I had described, my name is Barb Robinette and I am, I'm the oldest daughter in my family. I was born on the East Coast, but I grew up in Los Angeles. I came to San Diego to pursue my degree. I got my bachelor's degree in psychology and I quickly realized I didn't want to be a psychologist. So I got my master's in public health. And I am really excited to be interviewing for this position because it is right up my alley. It is completely in line with what I went to school to do and in my particular focus in health administration. Doesn't have to be much more than that.
Very concise, short, to the point, yeah.
Sure. And then they can ask questions. They might say, oh my gosh, you're from LA. I'm from LA. And then that starts the conversation.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. I think my question, when you were mentioning about notepads and taking water and stuff, or like when they offer you water, can you talk about if do they ever offer like alcohol? Because I know that's like a bigger thing, and if that should be accepted or not. I mean,
I don't think anybody would ever do that in a work environment.
Okay. I know for like some business, like the bigger business corporate stuff. I don't know.
You could do that when you go to a happy hour, you go to a meeting of some sorts, and they might have alcohol at the session. But not in an interview. You would never be offered that.
Okay, perfect.
That would be, if you are, that would be a red flag. I can't imagine that ever. And I would definitely say, no, thank you. I'm good.
Okay.
Yeah, no, regardless, and that goes to once you get hired, always being sure you have your wits about you. You always, I always try and caution everybody, you have to be really careful with how you indulge in a work environment because it can be very casual these days, and going to happy hour, going to a work function, they'll give out drink tickets, 2 tickets per person. Kind of like my vow to myself is I always stick with beer. Like I don't ever want to drink anything different than beer because everything else is really strong. And so it's like, if I could just have a beer and kind of just keep it on a slow roll so that it's like, I don't ever get buzzed while I'm in a work environment. That's always a good kind of practice.
Okay. Yeah. I just thought
that's a good question.
What if that does happen to someone and not knowing how to respond?
That would be very strange. I would think that is a huge red flag if you were offered alcohol in an interview.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I am going to stop us here. In the materials, there's information on body language, about what to do kind of like while you're sitting. And then there are some also questions to ask in an interview. Where are you in the interviewing process? If I were to be the candidate of choice, blah, blah, blah. Different kinds of questions. We talked a little bit about the close. Is there anything that would stop you from selecting me, considering me, recommending me, moving me along to the next level? I would say at this point, we are at the point where, I do not want to forget this because we could get rushed after you guys do a couple minutes of asking some questions to each other. Follow up. I don't know if you've heard this, if you've talked about this, but I will tell you, I have had students come back to me in the middle of my class weeks later and tell me that they think the reason they got the job was because they sent a thank you note. Do not ever go for an interview somewhere where you want to get hired and not send a thank you note. I personally think that if you are even if the person's in a work building, you didn't do it over the over Zoom. And you have the opportunity to do a thank you note on a written note card. In the classes I've taught in the past, we had an exercise where everybody had to write me a handwritten thank you note for the interview, and they had to also send me an email version of a thank you note. In today's world, an email is okay. I will tell you, a handwritten note to a hiring manager for a job you really want goes a long way. I've literally had students tell me they got the job because of it. So do not ever forget, thank you notes are required for any job. Like if you go in for an interview and you go, oh my gosh, I don't want that job. Don't waste your time. You don't have to do it. But if you want the job, do a thank you note. And then you can also, obviously, you can email it, you can write it in handwriting, pick your choices. Everybody could send an email, but you could really differentiate yourself. And I mean, I've literally told people you could go to Hallmark or Vons and buy blank thank you cards that say thank you on the cover and they're blank on the inside, and write a note. I really enjoyed the time we spent talking about the blah, blah, blah position. Look forward to hearing from you. That's all there is. It doesn't have to be much more than that. And then definitely feel free to, within the time frame of, because you've asked how long when they will be making a decision. If the time has come and next Friday has occurred and they were going to make a decision, pick up the phone, call and say, just curious, have you had a chance to make a decision? And if you leave a voicemail because they're not at their desk, you can always say, and if it's easier for you to shoot me an email back, feel free. So those are my hints. Do we have a question from Zoom? I don't think we're going to have time for the practice because I want to let you guys go.
Sorry, really quick. So 2 questions. One is, so when we answer to tell me about yourself, do we not include any of the strength skills we have?
No.
All right.
If they're just asking you, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah.
Hold off because you're going to get that question.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, as they want to know who you are first before
Yeah.
they know your skills.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then the other one is, should we include our contact information again in like the thank you note? Does that depend?
I don't really think you need to. If you're sending an email thank you, at the bottom of your email, it should say Susie Smith and your phone number. They have your email address already. That makes it easy for them to call you if they want to pick up the phone right away and call you, or they can just hit reply. In a thank you card that's handwritten, I don't think you need to. They have your resume.
Okay, thank you. And then one more, should we also mention or interest when they ask about, like when they ask that, tell me about yourself? Or
Yeah, I mean, you could say, I'm an avid hiker.
Okay.
I spend my free time on the weekends hiking with my dog. You never know. Somebody will be like, I hike too. Where do you go? I really like that. Yeah, I mean, if you're a marathon runner, if you're a mountain biker, if you have something that's like generically of interest, throw it in there. Can't hurt. You're a surfer.
Yeah, just keeping it very, like, I think brief, right?
Yeah,
Just
brief and light, and they want to kind of get a sense of who you are.
Exactly.
And it doesn't have to be academic. It doesn't have to be about what you've read. It can really be just about who you are as a person. I
Great.
always, I always gravitate towards the things that connect me with candidates. So like when I get a resume for somebody who went to San Diego State, I get excited because I'm like, I went to San Diego State too. And, kind of just different connections, whether it be Greek life or common area, like I had a student in one of my classes who grew up in the same hometown that I was from, those kinds of things. Those are the things that make me excited.
Thank you.
No problem. Any questions in the room? You guys are awfully quiet. We've lost a handful. It's 5 minutes till. I don't know that we should cram to do the exercise. You guys are all going to have the opportunity. You've got all the questions in the Canvas that are being posted to Canvas. I have one more video for you. If you want to stay and watch it, I would highly encourage you to, because it'll end the, let's see if I can get in here. Is this it? I think it is. It's a fun one. Oh, it didn't save as a link. Let's see if I can get it. And then we can wrap things up. And you are always welcome to email me. I don't know if my contact information is anywhere, Stephanie. But folks are always willing, you're always willing to email me and ask any questions about this topic or any other.
Yeah, we can provide that if that's not
What do you want?
already provided.
Okay, great.
What do you want?
Well, I guess I want a lot.
Hey, Tripp and Tyler here, and welcome to the Urgent RX Challenge, where we try to give real people real headaches.
Today, I'm going to give some unsuspecting job applicants the worst interview of their life.
Hi.
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
I'm sure. Good. So, you want to stand or sit? Okay, great. Actually, let's stand. Tyler. Lost. No, we'll sit. Okay. What was your name? I'm sorry.
Charity.
Charity. Charity. What's up, dude?
Nothing really, just,
Is that a perm?
excuse me.
A perm?
No, this is Nashville.
Oh, cool. What can I do for you?
I would like a job with your company.
Oh, great. This is a very well-formed resume.
Thank you.
And that's what I think about resumes. What were you hoping to make?
Money wise, how much am I looking to make?
Yeah. What were you hoping the salary would be?
Maybe 30 to 40.
Okay, it's not gonna be anywhere near that.
Okay, it was just the job listing said.
I know.
37.
How am I gonna get people in here? Lisa! There's a bug in my coffee.
Oh my gosh.
I'm not saying you did it. I'm not saying you did it. I'm just giving you another one.
Yeah.
Like right now. We're a people company. We care about our employees and our customers. What are you laughing at? Oh, yeah. Come in.
Hey, got your coffee.
Okay, I'm kind of in an interview here.
I'm sorry.
Checking for the bug. Do you sing?
Do I sing?
Yeah,
No, not really.
that's gonna be a problem. I stay out too late. Got nothing on my brain.
I don't really
That's
listen.
what people say.
Ooh.
You don't know that?
Yep.
Okay. Get out. Just kidding. Just kidding. That's nice. Can you do 20 more? So, yeah. Okay, you're hired. Now you're fired. Hired again, fired again. We don't want you. Charity. Hey, come here. This isn't real. This is a setup. This is a fake interview. Congratulations. You just won the Urgent RX Challenge. This actually isn't a real job interview. You just won a lifetime supply of Urgent RX headache relief to go. It's powder, it's flavored, it doesn't.
So if you ever think you had the worst interview ever, probably not. Anyway, that's all I have for interviewing. Call me, text me, email me, whatever it is, if you need help, or if you need any advice. Thanks.
Please stay. That doesn't mean we're gonna leave. Please stay. Thank you, Barb.
You're
Round of
welcome.
applause to Barb, please. I just want to say thank you for those that have stayed here and on Zoom. I noticed a couple people left. And so once again, thank you very much, because leaving is very disrespectful to a presenter. But again, Barb, thank you so much.
Really has nothing to do with me. It's all about whether, this class is all about you getting the career.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's like if you're not interested in staying.
Right.
It's all about you guys. It's not about me.
Thank you. Yeah.
I'd rather tell people who want to know.
Exactly. Well, thanks again. So a couple housekeeping things before we leave. Let's see. We talked about attendance. We already did that. Is everything clear with cover letter and resume? Yeah, okay. Let's see. Barb is gonna upload, we're gonna upload the slides just in case anyone needs that. And then what is the other thing I was gonna announce? I think I was gonna announce emails. No, I already said that. Okay, I think that's it. If anyone has any questions, wants to ask and stay, then do so. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
All right, for people on Zoom, just give me 1 second. I'm going to answer some questions from the people in person, and then I'll get to you, okay? Thanks for your patience. All right, Zoom people, I am so sorry.